Hello and welcome to Clawful Evil, Probable Claws, a show where we discuss Wildbow's least AI-generated work. I'm your very villainous hostess, Vice Versa.
And I'm your conniving hostess, Kippos. In this debriefing, we're covering chapters 3.3 to 3.6.
3.3 as well.
3.4 to 3.6, actually. My mistake. Yeah, what a trio of chapters. What a throuple of chapters, in fact.
Immediately.
We're immediately going there.
Immediately?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to be transparent with our viewership. I swore that I would not be doing any shipping and that I would be land-loving for this period.
Mm-hmm.
And though we skipped last week, I feel it would be insincere of me to work through that loophole and dishonest for me to stop now. So I am committing for this entire episode to not talk about any of the shipping material or any of the quotes in these chapters that have anything to do with that, because I believe in integrity.
I don't believe in integrity at all, and I think this was awesome.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, like, just in general, like, what a trio of chapters, though. Like, we get some fucking amazing action scenes, especially in 3.6, which are awesome and so intense. And then, yeah, we get so much here. Like,
yeah,
really, really great stuff.
I am very glad that we got to do all three, because we're going into Arc 4 after this, and if we'd stopped on 3.5 when the firefight started, I might have died.
Yeah, that would have been horrible.
And
like, it was already horrible having to wait like the, half a week between 3.5 and 3.6, but yeah.
I don't know. I when it comes to serials, there is something very tempting about the idea that you're going to get like regular infusions of story. I know for a long time I structured my weeks around like, when is like the X chapter coming out for Y series? But I think I value more the quality of the work. So like, even though it held us in suspense, the fact that Wildbow took additional time because he felt that he needed it, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like, it was a special kind of torture, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, Wildbow is a human being, and I would much prefer him to be like happy and safe and comfortable with his work and his schedule and everything than that, rather than like, running himself completely ragged.
Yeah,
like
transcending mortal weakness with serialized media is more for your 10th work. So it's respectable that he would be less ambitious for Claw and more sustainable.
Yeah, I think sustainability is a big thing about kind of doing anything online when you're trying to keep up with it over a long period of time.
And especially relevant to Claw, where sustainability has gone right out the window.
Oh yeah, no sustainability is happening at any point in Claw, that's
not
awesome.
One thing, not OPSEC, certainly not in these chapters. Valentina goes absolutely commits to the bit of transparency and just she lets Moses in. She drops Carson's name to Highland when he was bleeding out.
So good.
There's of course like Uncle Max, but by the end of 3.6, like we like they're being introduced to the neighbors even. Like the all of the barriers are coming down as far as separating the forces at play here, even between the police and the government, as we see. The description of the police as just another large gang certainly seems relevant now.
It feels very relevant to life, but that's probably a little heavy. But I'm just gonna drop it. We might not discuss that one too much, but yeah, it feels pretty relevant.
But hey, if we ever do that super dark and heavy historical episode with all the citations and like present talk about how things are going in modern day, the two of us might die from how difficult that will be and how harrowing, but that is a topic for that episode, not our analysis of Claw.
Yeah, absolutely. So shall we get on with these chapter summaries then?
Absolutely. In 3.4, Valentina learns the dark truth behind her past. Davy decided that she wasn't hardcore enough and paid Addie to traumatize her. After strategizing with her motley crew of a veteran, a hunter, a driver, and an angel, she and Hyland have a heart-to-heart about philosophies of people and how they feel about Mia. Valentina then reveals to the Cavalcantes that, in the case of who was leading the attacks on their operations, it was me, Gio.
Okay, in 3.5, Valentina calls soon-to-be a father, Nathan Mack, about building bombs, while simultaneously putting some to use, and brings Moses further into the fold by being transparent with him. Valentina then takes Hyland to get just one more gang, the two of them running face first into a combined ambush from the police and the Cavalcantes.
In 3.6, Valentina learns how to drive and how to defeat a killer AI using only a cup holder and this gun she found. Hyland puts the pedal to the metal shrapnel in his body, gets blood on the seats, and Val soothes him with ideas that I've sworn not to discuss for the time being. Carlos, the dude Gio propositioned the one time, threatens them both with a gun. Val chooses death over dismemberment, and he decides not to report them to Nicholas and Davy. Cousin Val and Uncle Max roll up to Josie's mom's house and try to convince her to let Josie live a little, when Ben rolls up outside the Hearst household. Val gives him the down low on the Cavalcantes, and he leaves just in time for the Cavalcantes to roll up with Mia and Carson in tow.
And that ending, I think, like, as soon as Mia and Carson, like, rolled up to the house, I was like, okay, this is the end of Arc 3.
Yeah.
Like, we're getting a new perspective. I'm so excited for it. Like, yeah. I think that felt like basically the perfect ending to Valentina's perspective.
The perfect not tied. I really think that of all the, like, there was reveal after reveal, or the tension in this episode was insane. Like I could feel it, I could see it. I was watching it happen. My goodness gracious. The fact that after all of that time, the Cavalcantes seeking her, trying to catch her, they are that close by the end. That they
so good.
within a block, like could have looked through the right window and seen her.
Yeah, perfect, absolutely perfect. I think. Yeah, like that's just such a beautiful moment of. Yeah, her standing at the window, just staring at them as they bring in Carson and Mia. It's so perfect, and it really kind of gets back to kind of what we felt with like the first arc of Claw in Mia's perspective, where like she was just this outside like entity just watching everything go down. And I thought that was really cool.
We've had a lot to see from Val in Arc 3, and to have it all framed by that note at the end of 3.4 of she was her father's daughter, she didn't want to find out how much. And then we get the whole firefight, we get the deployment of her own little baby gang assembled from the wreckage. We've gotten to see Valentina like go under that pressure and see like how she has changed and cracked, and I'm so glad that she spent so much time with Max, because if not for that, I mean, like, what would have become of her?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, oh yeah. Sorry, it's just it's been very intense. Like. And it's been so fucking
I think we're
going
to have a rough time of getting over just how much intensity there's been. I mean, we've got in our reveals section a laundry list.
We kind of do here, yeah. Like, you've put down this one, which is the part in 3.6 where they crash through, like, the through the fence. And it's funny, like when I went back to do my reread, I was getting through 3.5, and in my mind I was like, okay, the part where 3.5 ends is the part where they crash through the fence, because I just because it just hit me so hard, like that crazy juxtaposition between them like hurtling through the streets and then her waking up and just being like fucking shocked and like having no idea what was happening. Like it was so intense, it was so stressful, it was so good. Like yeah.
And with that fake out, you know, there's even like a section break. Like
yeah, exactly.
Structurally, like it's we're coming to the end of the arc. There's every reason for us to believe in that moment that the way that this arc ends is Valentina being captured.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when my dear friend was reading it, they were yelling aloud, like, "Oh no! Oh fuck! Oh no!" And I personally bought it entirely. I was so ready for this to be like possibly even the end of Valentino.
Yeah.
But
no, yeah, like that's exactly right. Like because it just hits so perfectly, and the section break is so perfect because it, you know, obviously like it just doesn't let on how long has passed. Like obviously looking back, it was 5 seconds, you know, but
she
in the
went
moment you're like,
and in that moment,
yeah,
like, it could have been days. I mean,
it could have been days. I mean, it could have been like 10 minutes. And the fact that it's just described as a crash because, you know, Valentina doesn't fucking know what's happening. And like, they've just had so many like near misses and like scrapes and stuff. And you're like, oh shit, like they've smashed the car. Like they're fucked, you know? And then Highland is like, no, we like went through the fence. Like that's the reason I was trying to get you to find this stupid little like yellow wire. And I was like, oh, it's so good. Like, it's just so... It's such a perfect little section, that one, and it's so fucked. It's so fucking bad. Like, but it's so perfect. I love it.
There's something like sink your teeth into it symbolic about frantically being told to find a wire that was never there, and the fact that it isn't there is a good thing, and it's only there because of someone else's neglect. Like
so fucking good.
Max's explanation after that of just like, oh, I was asking you to stop us from being exploded in the face, which is why I was frantic. But someone else was negligent enough to already have removed that. So actually, you were fine the entire time. You didn't need to be stressed about that. Felt like a perfect summation of what Valentina's had to put up with. Like again and again and again, she like puts her whole mind and force and anxiety and fear and like all the stakes in the world on trying to do something right, or like not be your father, or like understand why people like abandon her. And the reveal that she gets again and again is that there was no way for you to succeed. Your grasp situation is completely wrong.
Like you're just a kid. Like in so many of these situations, like you are at the whims of people that have more power than you, like people that understand the situation better, have more money, have more power, know what they're doing. And like, you're just put in a situation by forces outside of your control for reasons outside of your knowledge. Like, oh, it's so good. Fucking Valentina perspective. So good.
It was, I apologize for suggesting that she wouldn't have enough internal world for an arc, because I was wrong. I want to take some time.
Yeah, you were.
I was plain wrong, and I love being wrong, because I get to be, you know, bold and specific and incorrect. But the first of these, because it really was one after the other. The first of them was the Addie explanation. And I really want to get into what happened with Addie.
Same.
So she is in the same environment as Val, just lower on the totem pole. Davy asks her to traumatize Val with like honestly it's like propaganda like level like slander, like the kind of machinery you use to influence on an election. In terms of like sheer content of like generated hostility.
Yeah, and like months and months worth of constant, people harassing her. Like,
yeah, like
yeah.
a full harassment campaign, like miles beyond what someone would even imagine a bullying to be. And
Yeah,
her
exactly.
reason is just that, I mean, her reason is ultimately just that she thought she could climb a bit higher. And
Yeah.
like, and even like the win condition for what she could have gotten was not like high success or like freedom. It was, um, it was getting married and like marrying up.
Yeah, well, because she talks about like, from ages 12 to 16, the only way that she seed herself like staying in a similar position that she is, or even moving like slightly up so that she's not like this outsider on the periphery of the group that can't actually leave the group because of the social ties, but can't get further in.
Mm.
And the only way to do that is marrying like a Cavalcanti son.
Yeah, yeah.
So like from ages 12 to 16, like she's not even thinking like when I, grow older and I find someone that I fall in love with, she's like tactically like, what's the best strategy here for me to not be fucked when I grow older, because otherwise she'd be marrying like another member of the gang that's probably not a Cavalcanti because she's still stuck in that structure. Like she's still in that situation.
Yeah.
And I guess the only other way would be to just fucking leave the country,
And she's giving this explanation. We have this sort of war in terms of how she expresses it. Like we have Valentina is obviously not reasonable. Max is trying to like referee what is a very unreasonable situation.
Yeah.
And Addie is trying to synthesize that information, which is very similar to what even led her to being in the situation in the first place, right? Like she's getting rules that are unfair explained to her and rules that are unfair asserted on her viciously.
Yeah.
And the thing that stuck with me in all of 3.4 was simply that in another story, Valentina in 3.3 would have simply like done a horrible thing and it would have been off screen and like everyone would go off to their corners and they'd like wax poetic about it or wouldn't talk about it or be dismissed. And it wouldn't be for a long time before Addie came back because Addie would be like a prop to Valentina's story. But instead, Eddie's like mutilated, and we take the time to get her stitched up and talk to her and like learn how she's doing. Max has not one but two debriefs where he's trying to understand what even happened here and like get all the variables. And that's really like this is in 3.4 is the start of where we get to see Max and Valentina get along in like the way that defines this triptych of chapters. But I just want to emphasize the sense of Sonder, where like Addie has an entire life that we get insight into, and she doesn't go anywhere just because she's been the subject of someone else's story. And the same happens to Carlos. He's sort of a throwaway in 3.3, a flashback for how she came to be who she is, or Gio to Valentina. And then he comes back and we actually get to know his name. It's like navigating their relationship in 3.6 that leads to Valentina and Max escaping. So there's this constant humanization of the whole organization. Like it doesn't just end with our characters who can be complex, bad people that are trying to do better. It's the whole of every person in this world.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting as well because like, there's this moment in 3.5, I think. 3.4. Where Valentina stops and thinks about, a different gang member, the one that she killed. And, stops and thinks like this was a human being, like he grew up in the periphery of the gang and he joined the gang. And so, like, he's done some shitty things, like, you know, what was his young life like as, like, a person that's, you know, aside to the gang? And this would be, like, you know, similar for Carlos. And then she also thinks, like, yeah, but that's not all of him. Like, you know, he learned his ABCs at school. Like, he learned how to count. He hugged his mother, you know, like...
Yeah, there was probably...
He's a full human being.
There's probably a real human reason that he had porn on the back of his phone.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, maybe it's because he's a sleazy dude, or, like, maybe that was not, like, generic porn. It's, like, you know, like, it's his partner or something, in which case it's still kind of sleazy, but, you know...
Maybe he's sleazy for a deep and good reason.
Yeah, like...
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's sleazy, but consensual, you know?
Instead he's dead.
But yeah, instead, he's dead, and, like, he doesn't get his story, you know? And he's not, you know, quote-unquote important. And I think this is something that comes up in a lot of... Well, it's something that doesn't come up in a lot of stories. Because so often you get, like, the mooks that die, you know, 20 at a time, and your hero goes, yeah, yes, we've, you know, taken them down. And, like... I've never liked that, you know, in a lot of stories, where, like, it's the faceless goons that you know, murder 50 of, and then you get to, like, the villain, and you say, I would never, like, kill someone.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm taking you in as, like, to be, you know, charged.
I maintain the moral high ground. And here we are
exactly.
in the rolling valleys and hills of moral just depredation.
Yeah. But then, like, yeah, because, like, every single one of these people that they have killed throughout this book, they're a full fucking human being. Like, they had, you know, parents, they have partners, like, they have children, they have pets that they love, they have, you know, like, a full internal life.
Yeah.
And I really like I really like what Wildbow's doing there is with, like, getting into these people's, like, lives and kind of like letting the characters come to the realization that, like, yeah, we just killed, like, 30 people, and that's, like, 30 children that are, like, never going to see their parents again, you know? Like, that's yeah, and, like, 30 brothers and, like, 30 sons, and, you know, like, I really liked it. I thought it was really, really interesting, and it was really good for Valentina to kind of come to that realization, because, like, I think Mia and Carson don't give a fuck, you know? Like, I think you could, you know, sit Carson down and, like, show, like, one of the people he killed, like, show Carson his full life story and all of the beautiful moments, and Carson would shrug his shoulders and be like, I don't give a fuck about this dude. But, like, I really like that Valentina is not broken in the same way that Mia and Carson are, where she can say, yeah, shit, like, I killed a dude. Like, he had a whole life, and I ended it. And that's, you know, there were good reasons for me to do so, but also, like, yeah, a person that, you know, had a full life, had friends, had family, like, felt love, like, can no longer do that because of me. Yeah, I thought it was really, really good. Really, really humanizing. Yeah.
And it's happening at the same time that we're getting this, like, expansion to the cast of Valentina summoning like Mia's contacts. And the same extends for them. It's like some of them are bad people. You know, we have the Ledbetters.
The Ledbetters?
Who are just awful. And
so awful.
Like they take advantage of her. They try and, like, source money out of her. But we also have Nathan Mack, who, in, like, from a place of, like, higher learning and, like, what he believes to be like having studied, having done the research, he believes that building bombs and exploding them in certain places is the right answer. Like, we get, like, just the smallest vignette over him over the phone, and he's probably not going to be anything but our bomb supplier, but we get to hear his whole philosophy, and we get to see Valentina, like, wrestle with the fact that there's a person out there who, like, is sorry that she was, like is sorry for her that she was born in this century, and that's the same person that's providing her bombs for her campaign against her father.
yeah, I thought, yeah, I really loved everything that happened with Nathan because, like, you know, there's that moment where, when she's having that little, like, flashback to first talking to him, where he says, like, you know, don't pay, like, I'll give you the bombs, but don't pay me. Instead, what I want you to do is I want you, as someone who is, like, radicalized enough and, you know, dangerous enough that you're willing to plant bombs in buildings and blow people up and kill people, like, think about where that's going. And maybe instead of targeting the Cavalcantis, which, you know, they're doing bad shit and they're going to, like, really fuck up the local politics, like, consider where you can put that's more targeted at the people that have caused the world to be in the state that it is. And I thought that was, like, really interesting. I really liked that. Like, such a great moment that really talks about where his priorities are. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of it, where, you know, she's talking to him again and she says, oh, I'm 16. And then he apologizes. Like, I'm so sorry you had to grow up in this world.
Yeah.
And it's at that moment after that where he's like, I think you've given me a nudge.
Oh, no.
And it's like, yeah, like, he's 100%, like, he's going to build a couple more bombs and he's going to go find some political think tanks and he's going to plant them there. Like, yeah, like, she has just re-radicalized a dude, and maybe it'll help. Maybe it won't.
She's not just re-radicalized a dude. He's, by Moses's insight, and in all of this discussion, I want to watch Moses because we get very little insight into him, but we also get to see him take, like, vengeance on the Cavalcanti traditions, and he's coming from this very personal angle that we have very little insight into. So I think, like, if we're talking about, like, people's internal worlds, Moses is being a bit quiet about his. Plain in his motivation, but, like, not quite communicating. Like, we have Valentina, like, letting him in, of course, but we haven't heard quite everything from him yet, and I want to keep an eye out. The thing that I note about Nathan is Moses deduces that he might be having a kid. Because 8 months is a very interesting, like, these last 8 months, very interesting period of time. And that means that he's a variety of, like, Mia and Carson. Like, not just someone that is criminal and has a family, but is doing crime in part for their family. Like, why is it that Mia recreates identities? It's so that she can sell the thing that she wants to be the real truth, which is that Ripley and Tia are hers.
Yeah, exactly.
And, like, why is now Nathan going to do going to make chemical bombs? Because well, he wants his kid to not grow up to be like in Val's position and have to resort to this violence.
He wants his kid to grow up in a world where the people that have fucked things up for everybody see consequences. Like, yeah, which is so, like, it's such a reasonable desire.
It's a very reasonable desire. He's wanting justice. At the same time, you know, he's saying that the Cavalcantis are just a symptom and not the sickness. That, like, that we are the villains of this story of Claw are not the villains that led to this world being a thing. And I think the error that Nathan is making is not that he has the right villains, but the idea that there is a right villain. Because, like, from the way that Max described it, of how, like, we don't quite understand what mandate is, but we know the timeline of the, like, dominoes falling and then secret societies on secret societies, Watchmen watching the Watchmen. This collapse of governance as governance tried to govern governance, like, recursively. You know, there isn't. You can cut a link from a chain, but you can't stop a process. By like it's a symptom in sickness. Like, if you're why are the Cavalcantis merging with the police? Like, those reasons are a lot more complicated than the Cavalcantis exist. If you were Max and you shot not just the older brother Nicholas, but Davy as well, and their whole team, that power vacuum, the way it closed over, wouldn't immediately mend, it would scar.
Yeah.
And in all of this discussion about like the real like developed lives of the characters, and this like as an extension of that, the things that Nathan and Val talk about of like if there is all this fighting going on and all this chaos going on, what is the solution? Is there a right head to cut off the Hydra? I want to talk about the gun drone.
Yeah. So good.
My dear friend got gender envy from the gun drone. And what a creature it is.
We all know someone.
We all know someone that wants
yeah.
to be an acrobatic, like masterfully adapting, like highly cognizant, hyper efficient machine. But the way it was described, what a creature. One thing that I've loved about Claw is how it absolutely hasn't suspended Wildbow's cultivated talent for the fantastically horrifying monsters and superpowers and magic, you know, all that's like core to the world building of his other worlds, right? But Mia's tech wizardry, Davy's demonic brand of torture, they all stretch out of this very real setting into something that's kind of hyper real, but I kind of want to approach it less as like this is more than can be so, but instead they're expanding the window of what's possible, which tends to be how speculative fiction works. You entertain the probable, and then you end up with the classic example is 1984 and the surveillance state, and then we have phones that constantly are providing GPS. Like there's AI already being used in criminal enterprise and violence in our world right now, and of course that's for the heavy episode if we wanted to bring citations. But the vision of this alien mind driving a built to kill, like almost absurd in its efficiency with its like backflip from the gun that like pierces through an entire car. This creature is absolutely reaching out of the book and into our future. I think that is something that Claw does with its world building as a rule. As like it's in the cost, it's in the problems, it's in the lay of the land, it's in the tools that people are using. There is this intense sense of this could happen.
Absolutely.
I don't want to wake up tomorrow in Claw's world. But like Val has that moment where there's the cut and we don't know how long she's been out. And I really do think that it's just one screen break away from being more real than it already is.
I definitely, I think that's very true. And that's kind of that's part of what's worked so well about Claw is that like so much of this book, you look at it and you say, that's fucking horrifying. But I could see that happening like in a year or two. Like this is not like the far future. Like it's talking about a speculative now, And I feel like it feels accurate, a lot of it. Like the only thing that I would hope would never happen is the purposeful burning of like the national parks.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be shocked, if a group decided to do that. I'd be horrified, but I kind of still wouldn't be shocked, which is fucked. Like it's so fucked.
It's incredibly fucked. Speaking of a different sort of fucked.
Yeah.
I am not allowed to talk about
this.
I am not allowed to talk about this. That's in the notes. So if you want to talk about this, if you want to talk about Max,
okay,
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I'll take the burden on with the throuple talk and Valentina proposing polyamory, which is so fun. As both of us being polyamorous, it's just so much fun to see polyamory mention, and in a really funny way.
Jesus
I
fucking
think
Christ! This
probably,
Gen Z bullshittery.
It's so good. I feel like a lot of people got a really good laugh out of a what the fuckle after Valentina proposed a throuple. Like, so good. And I would also like to call out that all of this happened right next to the pegging wall.
The what?
The pegging wall, you know, the wall that has P3G on it.
The what?
Yeah. Yeah, the pegging wall. And
You know?
yeah, it's great.
You know?
And I did specifically call out in my live read that I do think that the only way this would work is if Highland bottoms. Yeah. Because I could see both Mia and Carson being tops. And so if Highland bottoms, I think it works.
I've sworn not to comment.
And Wildbow might agree, considering the pegging wall.
Oh, there's evidence in the literature. You can pull citations.
It's so good. I think, like, aside from, like, you know, us, like, joking about it now, but, like, the way that it perfectly, like, just cuts through that tension, you know, where you've had this huge chase scene and, like, you're not even certain if Highland's going to live through the next, like, little bit. And yeah, like what the fuckle, like right after this, like horribly tense, like sequence of like blood everywhere, you know, like Highland with his arm, like with his hand barely hanging on, like all of that. It's just like, it's such a perfect juxtaposition. And I think it gave basically everyone a much needed laugh after that section.
Yeah.
And like really,
what a relief.
Yeah, cut through that tension. Yeah, exactly.
And
then it ramps up again after that when Highland goes to sleep, and you're like, is he gonna live through that?
Is he gonna wake up? We don't know.
Yeah.
But then, you know,
it's so good.
The tension does ramp up after that, with the encounter with Carlos. But I want to take a moment just to talk about Max in general. Because, you know, I could talk about how these things would interact with dynamics, or speculate as to how like it might not or might work with certain people hypothetically, but I wouldn't be. Well, then I'd be taking sail, wouldn't I? I'd be setting to ship, and I'd be getting out into the water, feeling the breeze on my face, seeing the horizons expand. But anyway, the reason that it comes up is because that Val is thinking about relationships in general. There's a quote, "What I did to Addie, I think that came from my dad." Then there was a moment I felt like Mia. A moment it's like Carson lives in the moment, and even when looking back, he lives in that moment in his memories. I had a few moments of that. And you know, that's the real like child experience when you're like trying to like come out into a full, like a fully realized adult. She describes herself as a shadow cast, and Max talks about how, you know, you can be deliberate with that. Like, emulation is a skill, and you can choose what you are drawing from other people. But the reason I pull that quote in particular is because Val volunteers Carson's name.
Yeah.
And, you know, part of it's probably that Max is delirious and she's not sure if he's going to survive, so why play for the future? But, gosh, there's that quote, "You believe in soulmates? Fuck no, but I've got some severe blood loss."
So good.
There's that's a quote for the history books. I just in all of this, Max is being deeply paternalistic to Val. And you know, we had this whole thing of, doesn't Val, like, just latching onto Carson and Mia indicate just how like needy she is for that relationship? And in turn, Max is lonely. He is seeking the same sort of thing. He wants to mentor. He wants to be like regardless of how that conversation goes and how he calls it Gen Z bullshittery, he does smile slightly, and I would be breaking my oath if I were to speculate on what that might mean. But for himself, not in regards to his relationships that are romantic, it reflects that Max is in a very similar state to, I mean, a lot of these people. Moses touches on it, Bolden touches on it. The sense of like, now that you've moved on from your old life, you're lacking in community. You're lacking in the sort of the simple belonging and the sense of home. And I do believe that he is seeking that out, and that's part of why he takes so much time with Val. And it is really sweet that she appreciates his emotional candor. Arguably he had no choice but to be completely enraged by Valentina cutting up Addie. That's sort of the sane response, and arguably he had no choice but to be like slightly off the hinge and clear cut when he was bleeding out in 3.6. But yeah, he's not manipulative. He's very sincere, and that's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I think I remember I pulled that out in my live read of 3.4, which is like, he's so angry at her, and I really like that, because like we saw in like 3.1 when Valentina is talking to Mia, and she's so anxious always because Mia is that closed fist. Like she's ready to, like, it feels like she's ready to lash out at any moment. And then we see when she's dealing with Davy, and Davy is like this, smiles all the time until like the second that he's not. And then it's like danger and fear. And Highland is not either of those things. He's not like struggling to keep his cool, and he's not like ready to flip on a second and be dangerous. If he's mad, he's fucking mad. And he's not going to hit her, but he's going to be pissed as hell. I really, really liked that. Yeah, just like that juxtaposition to like all of the other adults in her life. And even like Carson, who is not as much of a closed fist or anything like that, but who is very manipulative. Like just kind of naturally. I think we talked about that during Carson's arc, just like how manipulative he is and like how much he doesn't wear like his emotions on his sleeve. Yeah, I thought, that was really, really cool as a juxtaposition. And I think, exactly what she needed. Like, she needed an adult to be fucking angry at her because she did something bad. And, like, angry at her in a way that doesn't put her in danger, but lets it all be out in the open, you know?
Yeah, and demonstrates, like, what you should do with that kind of feeling. Which is like, he doesn't hit her. He just requires of her to like volunteer information and be more transparent with them. And she does then proceed to implement that with like, there's a lot of the drawing in people into the fold here, and I think that's part of Max's influence on Valentina.
Which so good.
I would like to sort of as a point of like bouncing off of it just for a moment, the Angel of Death is completely resistant to all of that. We don't even know her name. She's so normal. And like that is a ticking time bomb if that is Valentina's approach, I would say. Because here is someone that is not receiving any of that whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's really interesting because she was never part of like the gang life or, she was part of like the criminal life, but in the sense that she was giving abortions and like helping euthanize people that needed it. Like, she's not like Highland. She's not like Moses. She's not like Mia or Carson or anybody else like that. She wants to help people. So yeah, I think keeping an eye on, the Angel of Death is really interesting. And I really like it. I like how little she wants to be part of this while still wanting to be part of this to, help them out and trying to make this gang stop hurting people. And I would love to get her perspective on things.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give her all the charity in the world because, she kept Bolton alive. And if Bolton's alive, then, well, I'm not ready to talk about that.
Presumably, she's also kept Highland alive at the end of this chapter.
Yes, and I'm appreciative of that for reasons that I can say, like how it supports Valentina.
Yeah, and also reasons that you can't say.
Yes, also reasons that I can't say.
Yeah, so I think something else that's been really interesting like throughout these last couple of chapters, also just throughout, you know, Valentina's whole perspective, is how much she kind of goes back and forward on like how much she thinks her mum is dead. Like at times here, she's just like almost 100% internalized it. She's like, yeah, my mum's probably, like, when I called her, like, I killed her, you know, like, and it's kind of my fault. And then other times when she's going through, she's like, you know, trying to think of the things that can keep her like alive and sane. And one of those is like the hope that she'll be able to see her mum again, which I just think is, yeah, like it's really interesting how she both uses it part of like as a stick to punish herself for like being needy as a, you know, quote unquote needy, as a younger child. And also like as the carrot to like give herself the hope that at some point she might be able to see her again.
It's part of that beat that we touched on last time on how Valentina is very big on taking responsibility. So it's sort of whichever one she needs to like in order to feel something about it. Because if it's not her fault, then and her mother is dead, that has no utility for her. Like there's nothing there to feel but indignation or hurt, and that's just going to slow her down. But if she can shame herself for it and say, I'm the reason my mother is dead, then that guilt and shame is fuel for moving forward. And if her mother is alive, then, as you say, it's that carrot. So she's it's almost like she's finding utility in whether in that Schrodinger's question.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just thought it was a great thing, I think, that I was able to pull it out right at the end of her perspective here. And it's possibly something we should have been talking about a little more earlier on. But I think, yeah, it has been really interesting seeing how she thinks about it and how she uses that thought. Yeah. Moving on a little bit, I think like there's that moment with the Ledbetters, and we like talked a little bit about how fucking evil they are, you know. But I thought it was really interesting how easily they played her, like, you know, because clearly Valentina is like she's naive, and they can hear that, and she seems desperate, and they can probably fucking hear that as well. And so like, you know, as soon as they hit the place, they're like, no money here. Like, bull fucking shit, you know, like there is absolutely, like, they have just picked up like tens of thousands of dollars. I am almost 100% certain. And they're like, well, I mean, this stupid fucking kid will probably send us more money. So yeah, we'll tell her there's nothing here. And like, she immediately jumps on it and is like, oh my God, like double check the place. If you can't like find any money, we'll figure something, like we'll get you your money. And it's like, don't say that. Like they're not, you know, they're then clearly going to be like, okay, there's nothing here.
Stop trying to be reasonable with them.
Yeah, exactly. Like they are like, you know, they are the bad guys kind of, you know, like they're clearly fucked up. And yeah, she's just kind of letting them like take her for a ride because of her naivety. And it's like, this is one of those cases where it's like, Mia would see through that. Like, yeah, like Mia would want some fucking proof that there's no money there, you know? Which, yeah, I thought that was a really interesting, you know, bit of character work for Valentina, showing how that she is still this, yeah, very naive person, and like showing how desperate she is, you know? I thought it was really cool. And then I pulled out this line because it's fucked. And Wildbow, I think you've wrote basically the most fucked sentence that's going to be in the book at all. And this is from 3.6, right after the crash. And Valentina thinks to herself, will my dad love me again if I'm his like this? Like thinking about being in the basement. And holy fuck, like, God, that's so brutal, you know? Like, oh.
It's...
Yeah.
I mean, I'm honestly speechless over it. Because...
Yeah, like... Yeah.
She just wants to be
The
loved.
line hits... Yeah, the line hits like a fucking freight train.
Mm.
Because, like, not only does she just want to be loved, but, like, she wants her family, like, her biological family, like, the people that she grew up with, she wants them to love her.
Yeah.
And it's like, is there anything more fucking tragic than that? Where she's, like, he's clearly willing to put her life on the line because, you know, he has the gun drone firing at their car and he has all of, like, the cops and the Cavalcanti members, like, firing at the car.
Mm.
I'm like, yeah, like, Carlos is told to, like, bring her in alive. But there's, like, if they were actually 100% not okay with her dying, they would not have been shooting the car, you know? Like,
Yeah.
clearly she was an acceptable casualty in this.
Yeah.
And that, like, fuck, I don't know. Yeah.
It's an insight into Davy's philosophy that he would treat her that way because, like,
yeah,
either she is entirely used up her chance and he's just going to kill her because he doesn't particularly care, or since she's no longer useful to him, he won't put in that effort any longer. But
yeah.
Then there's the alternative. I've seen this suggested in a couple of places. I saw it on Discord. I've seen it on the Reddit. The alternative is that the reason that Davy is treating her like this is not any different from the reason that he hired Addie. The moment that he learned that his Geo was the cause of all of this, this firefighting, the thing that we could most closely recognize in his emotional palette was not rage, but rather pride. And this is the biggest, bold, and specific prediction in the world that if we ever see 3.6 happen, like that moment that Valentina was scared of, that she was captured, that instead of dismantling her, Davy will grab her by the shoulders and say, "Congratulations. Well done. I knew you had it in you.
I hate that more.
come on home, you know? We'll make dinner.
No.
We'll use some human flesh. I've got a lovely cut of rib." And
it's so fucked.
Because she would have become like him. And like there's that moment in 3.4 where she reflects on being in such a terrible position that she hugs the man with a single intact eye. And that he sighs because his chin thunks into the shoulder and rests there because he also needs that support. And right now, Val has been put to the position of that man with the single eye, where she's so tired and so beleaguered that if at least she was still loved, she's willing to consider it and accept it. And if that's what Davy inflicts on people, and Davy also fits on the opposite side of that equation where Gio was, giving the man a hug, then if Valentina is now in that man's position, then that is the time for Davy to actually start supporting her.
I hate it so much.
What can he say? You know, he only supports his kid when they've been brutalized. But you know, builds character.
God, it's so fucked, you know? Like, it's just so fucked. It's fantastic, but it's it's fucked.
It's
like
fucked
completely.
Up.
Okay. I did want to talk about, like, so we've known, basically since we've known Valentina, like, even from, like, Mia's perspective, I think, how much Valentina, like, prides herself on being put together and, like, on being, you know, well maintained and, like, looking good and all of that. And I really like this idea. Yeah, and I really like this idea that it's not just from, like, the private school, you know, but also, like, she talks about here when she's, like, got blood on her and, like, her shirt is, like, sweaty and she's, you know, she's like, "Oh, I'm so gross." And Highland's like, "I don't give a fuck." Like, you know, that's not even top 1,000 on my, like, priorities right now. And she's like, "I care." And then she thinks about, like, you know, the people in the basement. and like, yeah, just like linking herself being, you know, gross and sweaty and like dirty with being one of those people.
Yeah.
And I just really love this contextualization of like, that is like a large part of why she needs to be clean and well put together, because being unclean is like, you know, it links herself in her mind to being in that basement.
Mm.
And it's just, it was such a good small piece of character work in that short discussion between Highland and Valentina, which like I admit on my first go through like of the chapters, I just kind of brushed over it. I was like, why does she care that much?
Yeah.
Like, you know, this is like a high stress situation. She should be worrying about the guns and everything. But like coming back through again and being like, no, of course she fucking cares. Like that's, you know, that's her trauma. Like that is her greatest fear.
Just to build on that.
Yeah.
You know, the when we met Gio and she decided on the name Valentina, she was required not to have a link between those two names. And then we learned that in the slander in 3.3, they I think it was a Gucci Gang joke, where like so much of her life being destroyed was about fashion, and being pushed down that drain toward that point in the basement, or a scenario like it, a different sort of torture. She then goes for the name Valentina, as in like Valentino white bag, and to center in her sense of self the idea of fashion. In doing that, she has centered her trauma. She has centered her need to be put together and presentable, because the alternative to a name like fashion is like, or having fashion, is to be a nameless living corpse in the basement.
Oof. Yeah. Fuck, it's so good. Oh, I don't know. It's just so good. And yeah, like everything with Valentina is hit so hard, and like she really has been just a fantastic perspective. And I'm very sad that we'll be moving away from her next chapter, but I'm excited for the new.
It'll be lovely to see her again. I've been really missing Mia and Carson. And I think we'll be missing Valentina too.
Yeah. I think even like in Arc 3, I think it was kind of the perfect choice to rip Mia and Carson away. For like that tension. But yeah, I love the idea that we'll be getting them back soon. Yeah. So I also want to talk quickly about like the discussion with Carlos, and I really think it's like super interesting in this section where she is saying like, I'm not going, like there's no way I'm going with you. You can either kill me or leave. Like I will never get out of this car and go away with you. And he's like, and she's like, oh, you know, didn't you ever wonder like why, you know, there's a permanent like team of doctors on the staff and like all of these things. And he's like, oh, well, you know, I've heard the stories. And she's like, I went in there, like, you know, if you like go back and say you saw me and don't have me, like, you know, 50% chance you end up in that basement, like missing limbs and like, you know, hooked up to machines. And he's like, oh, there's just stories. Like he just keeps on repeating this lie that clearly he has internalized. Like he kind of feels probably like he has to believe it, because as he says to Highland, like he is one of Davy's people. And the idea that your boss, who's like, you know, like he's like a gangster, like he's a mobster. And so he's scary and he's dangerous, but he's not like a monster. You know, he wouldn't like take people's like limbs off and put them in a basement, like to torture them forever.
What? Of course not. No, he'd never do that.
Yeah, like I thought it was really, really interesting. And like, yeah, I also really like, even from like a tactical like point of view of like saying that basically like when she's like, giving names like, oh, here are the people that were taken, and she mentions the contact Timoteo, but then also says like Moses's name. Like, I just really like that tactical, like little tactical thing of like, if someone does remember Moses from back in the day, probably the main thing they'd remember is like he disappeared, and at the same time a bunch of money went missing. And it's like, if anything is going to make people like suspicious of Davy, it's like, oh yeah, that guy ended up in the basement, at the same time as like $500,000 went missing. Like,
yeah.
Which I really liked.
But it is interesting that she would throw that out there because it's a good strategy. But the premise to this arc was Mia and Carson immediately, because they're on the same wavelength, being able to tell the same lie to survive with Davy in the room. Meanwhile, Moses has been spray painting Philippe Pereira. Pereira?
Yeah.
There's another RA at the end there. And is like has a personal vendetta against the Cavalcantis. So it's a clever move, but it doesn't match the overall narrative because we know that he's out there, or he's trying to be vocal about being out there. It's but like a whole encounter is them trying to outmaneuver Carlos because he's the weak link in this scenario. And we're just getting to see how he's been programmed. And their solution is not to deprogram him, because he refuses to look at the pictures. He does not want to see them because it would mean changing his view. It would mean too much. His world will crumble.
Yeah.
So he can't risk it, and he refuses it. But it almost resembles the conversation with Addie, where like Max is just the one saying, nope, yep, she's gonna be that level of unreasonable. No, like I'm gonna confirm, I'm referee here. I assure you, she would rather be shot. And that is where they are on the same wavelength, because they actually have been in a scenario like this before. It's excellent to be practicing for how you'll behave when at gunpoint.
Yeah, which is it's great. It's really fun. I don't know. I think we've probably talked about it a fair bit, but the relationship between Highland and Valentina is one of the one of the less expected things to come from this arc, and it's one of the better things to come from this arc because it's been so much fun.
My dear friend was really hoping for it, so I'm quite happy about it.
Yeah. Okay, did you want to get into this scraping by?
Yeah. Oh wow, the quote about a concrete wall painted peg. Yeah, it's right here.
It's right there.
It's interesting when the brain moves away from a space and tries to self-censor what things fall out of your periphery. But I have this
didn't even notice the pegging wall.
I have this quote here of how Max describes the loneliness he feels. It's the loneliest fucking thing. The world breaks you over its knee, and you pick yourself up, limp forward, fucked up and disappointed. And Valentino volunteers lonely to try and keep him going because he's running out of power. You pick yourself up, broken, hurting, a particular kind of fucked up. The rest of the world keeps going. You're all alone, and the fucked upness of it all. And that sort of scraping by is the fashion in which this world is falling apart. Again and again, people get fucked up in unique ways that don't interact very well, and the rest of the world keeps going. There's Max talks about why he's doing this in 3.4, and he centers that Mia is giving people second chances, and that philosophy connects with this pain that he's feeling, where the rest of the world moves on. Mia at least reaches back to try, and it's not necessarily how she thinks of it. It's not necessarily why she's doing it, but Max has built it up in his head as symbolic of something really valuable that the world is missing. This opportunity to heal, recover, or at least be brought back into the fold, and the world continuing with you rather than leaving you behind. So
Yeah.
major theme as far as what the arc name would be. I'd also like to take time just to mention some rap sheet stuff, which is, of course,
Please do.
that Carlos's crime against the family is to be punished with being drawn and quartered. And Valentina's crime of fighting the family is to be rewarded with being folded back in and made into a new lieutenant. And with that, let's get into bold and specific predictions.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, okay. I think if you would like to do your bold and specific prediction first.
Okay.
That would be great.
It's been 2 weeks. I believe it would be insincere to the spirit of my commitment to discuss any shipping herein. But in order to get through it, I have invented a whole new variety of speculation just to tie myself over, since replacement behaviors are always more effective than going cold turkey from your given addiction. I call it training, which is like shipping, except instead of hoping a romantic relationship will occur, you hope the character will learn something from another one. And we've just had Mia returned, and we know that the drone guys have been shot off repeatedly, and they still have more drones, but they don't necessarily have pilots. And I just think it would be a really nice thing for Mia to, while under the employ of Davy, to learn how to use the drones. I think that is a very intuitive piece of training, and I think she might get some time with some of the drone guys and maybe I got some insight into that operation. And I think it would be really fun.
I think it'd be cool. Yeah. For my bold and specific prediction, I think at the end of the story, we're going to see Highland is just like a part of the family unit now as Valentina's uncle. And like, I don't think he'll have much of a relationship with like Ripley and Tia, but I think he'll be Valentina's uncle forever.
Aww. That's really sweet.
Yeah. I think it's nice.
I was so ready for you to just sort of mock me with as many possible ship predictions as you could, but I appreciate your restraint.
I mean, no, I'm like trying to be a little bit good.
Aren't we all?
I mean, if I wasn't, I would say like, actually, I don't have any of them. I mean, I'm still on like Valentina, Josie. I think that's a good ship. I think we're all aboard for Sax. Yeah.
I have promised not to comment at this time. For a discussion question.
Yeah. Oh, wait, no shit. Hold on. Sorry, 1 second.
Oh no.
I just remembered something, and this is like this kind of ties into an old bold and specific prediction. But there was something I wanted to put my tinfoil hat on just for a quick second before we could jump into the discussion question.
Okay.
Which is when Valentina, and I didn't write this down in my notes because I'm a fool. When Valentina gets like her little snacks in like 3.4, she notices a movement out of the corner of her eye, and she thinks there must have been a mouse or something, and then doesn't think any more about it. And I don't fucking believe that for a second. That is important, and that's my that's important. That's my bold and specific prediction, as well as the uncle thing.
Bold and specific prediction. Our next arc perspective is a mouse that saw Valentina one time.
Yeah. And it's like a Cavalcanti trained mouse.
A Cavalcanti trained mouse. It's like a Ratatouille,
like Ratatouille style.
Yeah. The real mastermind behind Davy's operation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, discussion question.
Last week, we asked,
if your friendship group had to drop a topic for a week, which one would be hardest?
Sleeping Beluga on the Parahumans Discord thread answered, it's an interesting question, since not all of the friends I spend a lot of time with interact. Sort of work-related friends, game hobby-related friends. For work friends, it would probably be microbiological stuff. That's the largest niche topic that has overlap. Maybe chemical engineering in general, but that's quite broad. And for hobby-related friends, probably the lore of whatever D&D campaign is currently going on and what twisted shit is happening there.
That's a good answer. And I think we're about to jump into another answer, which is very similar. So from Ripper1337, or Rip Elite, for the discussion question, it would be Dungeons and Dragons. We're all in a game together, so it would be hard not talking about the game.
Do you think playing a session counts as violating the drop topic?
I think you can play a session, but if you talk about the session outside of the session time, then except for like to schedule, But if you like casually chat about it, then you're gone. Like you're fucked.
Well, that's just the thing, because 99% of D&D is trying to schedule it. So
yeah. I think you're allowed to schedule, but if you chat like that was a great game, or like I want to talk about this thing that happened, I think you're gone. Like that's it.
Desarwet said, starting with myself and 3 housemates but expanding outwards, my friends and I tried to condition ourselves into dropping 2 behaviors, not exactly topics. Instead of a swear jar, lost cause, we instituted a self-deprecation and unnecessary apology jar. The theory was that we'd either have great self-esteem by the end of the year or be able to get a takeaway. By the end of year one, there was enough for the 4 of us to go out for dinner and cocktails. Since then, it's mostly been a metaphorical jar, when if someone does the thing, you just yell jar at them. I think that's really worth it. I think that's probably worth picking up.
Yeah. I think if I tried to do that, I would go bankrupt. I don't think I could deal with that one. I think that one's too much for me.
Well, then you can just empty out the deprecation jar and you've got an incredible amount of savings.
Maybe. So, my tallest says, parasocial relationships can be really unhealthy. Unrelated, it would be very difficult for my best friend Kipos and me to stop talking about how fuckable various Wildbow characters are. Which sounds crazy out of context, but it's a reference to the APU2 APU BTP stream, which was really fun. Thanks, bestie.
Oh my goodness. I'm so happy for you too. Which is a... No, I can't elaborate on that, can I?
Probably not.
Parasocials... I'm not going to get lost in this one. I don't want to be forsworn. Dante from Twigging on to Twig answered, a lot of people in my friend group are musicians. Dropping music talk would probably be hardest. I suppose someone ought to mention dropping Wildbow as a topic of conversation in this community would also be hard. Lol. And I believe that's possibly the most correct answer.
Very difficult, yeah. Sweet Manzana says, comic book shit. And more recently, Javier Milei, I don't know how to pronounce that last name, Milei, very annoying.
That's the president of Argentina.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I don't know the lore there, but I understand that it's bad.
Right, yes, fair enough then.
So as for our answers...
Yeah, so for me, honestly, like, it's Claw. Like, I want to talk about Claw, like, a fucking lot. And having to not do that would be very difficult. Like, I forgot to talk about Claw with a friend, like, last week. I felt terrible. All I wanted to do was talk about it with them. Apart from Claw, it's probably, like, Arknights. And anyone that knows, anyone from the Arknights thread on the official Parahumans Discord, shout out to you guys. And look, honestly, the songs are just really good in Arknights. I like Arknights a lot. You can't stop me from talking about it.
For a long time, I had trouble with like Hades because of how often I was listening to its soundtrack.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
Between I and my dear friend, at least, Claw would be a challenge, alongside Names, Colors, and Peter Pan. Pale would be difficult for me, of course. But in terms of groups, I was in a drag show recently. That was the talk of the town for a bit, so that'd be a hard thing to drop. Names, gender, my siblings default to certain topics, D&D, Magic the Gathering, musical theater. Those would be the family challenges. But the hardest topic for me to drop would be shipping, because I have been struggling so hard. I have been I don't have stress nosebleeds, but I thought I was going to start getting stress nosebleeds. I have lost sleep. I have been in remission, Kippos. I have been like staying up until 4 a.m. and sleeping until 7, and I have been ragged. Like, the bags under my eyes have been like deadly.
It's okay. From after this episode is published onwards, you can go all in on shipping.
Okay.
Again.
Okay.
It's going to be okay.
I can wait. I am a patient woman. I am able to, if I truly care about something, I can have restraint.
Exactly.
This week's discussion question is, Kippos, you were thinking of something?
Yeah, so this week we want to hear, what trio from fiction would you really, really want to see in a throuple?
God damn it!
Which I think is a really fun discussion question.
Yeah, it's a really great discussion question, Kippos.
Yeah, and look, it can be any fiction. Like, if you think Adam, Eve, and God, or Adam, Eve, and the snake should get in a throuple, like, let us know.
I'm going to start bleeding. I'm going to laugh so hard my ribs will stab my lung. I'm
and it'll be great.
Forget about shipping. I'm going to sink to the bottom of the sea.
So yeah, let us know in our discussion thread. Yeah. And thanks everyone for checking out the episode. What an awkward outro. Okay, check out Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. This is his secret collaboration between the local gangs and the police. We're just caught in the crossfire.
And please give us a rating and review on the podcatcher of your choice.
If you want to chat to us about the show or follow along with live reads, check out our channel on the Doof Media Discord. Find the invite link at doofmedia.com/discord.
Bye for now.
And we'll see you all next week.